It was a spooky, scary, and ultimately sad ending to Game 6 on Halloween last night. The Blue Jays, on the cusp of winning it all, lost to the Dodgers, evening out the series and forcing them to repeat it all again tonight in a do-or-die Game 7 of the World Series. Joining us now is Scott Stinson, Global News sports contributor. Scott, good to have you back on.
Thanks for having me on, Niv.
Now, let's start at the end because that was an eventful ninth inning, to say the least, and a bit heartbreaking because it looked like we had a shot at turning things around for a second. The crowd was on its feet, and then it was all over in a flash. What happened?
Yeah, it's very rare to see a game go from so much anticipation for something big to happen to being over in a flash. But basically, the Blue Jays had runners on second and third. They had one out, but no, sorry, they had none out, and it looked like there was a potential for a big rally there. They were down 2 runs. They needed 2 runs to tie the game. And then Ernie Clement popped up on one pitch, and then 2 pitches after that, Andres Jimenez hit what looked like it would probably be a single into left field, but the Dodgers outfield, Kike Hernandez, caught it and quickly threw to second base, where Toronto's Addison Barger was doubled off for a double play, and all of a sudden, 3 outs in about the space of 3 pitches, and the inning was over, and 44,000 some odd fans of the Rogers Center were left in fairly stunned silence. It's one of those moments in sports that happens, and you kind of have to do a double take and figure out if what you saw just happened. But unfortunately, what people saw had in fact happened, and the Dodgers won the game. The rally was over, and as you say, it's back to the Rogers Center Saturday night for Game 7.
Yeah, tragic. Quite a roller coaster of emotions for all of us watching. We
Mm-hmm.
did lose ultimately, but are there any positives that we can take away from last night?
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is that the Jays continue to, generally speaking, outplay the Dodgers in most facets of the game. The Game 6 situation was very unusual in that the Jays had more hits, they had more runners on base, they had far more opportunities to generate offense. But Los Angeles managed to bunch their hits together, and they scored 3 runs on 3 hits in the third inning, and that ended up being the difference. So the Jays can take away that they continue to have more hitters that seem to be comfortable at the plate, more guys that are putting good swings on the ball, more opportunities to score. It was just one of those weird games where the breaks didn't go their way. They didn't quite get the big hit they needed. We mentioned obviously already the bizarre ending to the ninth inning, but they hit into a couple double plays earlier in the game. Those things really take the life out of a rally. You think you might have the pitcher on the ropes, and then the double play ball comes and the inning's over. So they were in a situation where they did kind of probably everything they felt they needed to do. They put pressure on the Dodgers. They had opportunities to score. They just didn't take them. And so I think they'll go into Game 7 feeling like they're still doing what they want to do, which is play good offense, get good pitching, and do what they need to do to get a victory. It didn't work out in Game 6, but I don't think they're going to go into Game 7 feeling like they've been severely outplayed, because they certainly haven't been.
Yeah, certainly. I think, and that's been the story of this entire postseason. For the Dodgers, obviously, last
Mm-hmm.
night was a do or die, coming into an away Game 6
Yeah.
down by 1. Now, after their 3-1 win, the series, it's now evened up. Who would you say has more pressure on them as we head into Game 7 tonight?
It's an interesting question because Game 7 is kind of brutal for everybody. There's a whole sense of we're so close, we just need to win this game, and also we don't want to blow it. There's a real sense for both teams when you get into this situation that if you lose, it will have been such a great opportunity lost. So I think they'll both be feeling some pressure. I do think that the Dodgers, kind of in a broad sense, have a bigger expectation on them because they are the defending World Series champions. They have the highest payroll in baseball by some distance. They have superstars like Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and basically every one of their starting pitchers. So they were the heavy favorites coming into the series. And ultimately, if they don't win, it will be a significant setback for them. Having said that, the Jays did come home with a 3-2 series lead and had 2 games at home to try to win the World Series. So if Toronto, if those players think about what that means, they don't want to lose 2 games at home to lose the World Series, then they'll be feeling the pressure too. But in the broad sense, I think they kind of came into this World Series knowing that they had nothing to lose going up against a team like the Dodgers. And on some level, they probably still feel that way.
Certainly. The Jays manager, of course, following the game, John Schneider, called Game 7 the 2 best words in sports. And he said that while talking about Max Scherzer getting ready to pitch tonight, saying he's been getting ready for this since Game 3. What do you expect from there? What will you be watching from both sides tonight?
Well, the Scherzer story is a fascinating one because he is 41 years old. He was signed by the Jays in the offseason as a free agent to sort of be this veteran presence. They didn't really have any idea what they would get from him, and in the end, they didn't get a lot over the course of the season. He was injured for much of the season. He did come back and pitch reasonably well for the middle part of the season, but then with his age and sort of wear and tear, he kind of ran out of gas down the stretch. But he's been good in the playoffs. And he is an incredible big game pitcher. I happen to cover the 2019 World Series when he was with the Washington Nationals, and he pitched Game 7 for Washington. He kept them in that game. They ultimately won it late, and he is a guy who just has boatloads of do or die, backs against the wall kind of experience. So even though he's not necessarily been Toronto's best pitcher over the course of the season, I think they probably feel great having him in there for a Game 7 just because he's been there and done that. The whole wild card question is the Dodgers, and they didn't confirm who their pitcher is. There seems to be a belief. There's been some reports out of various baseball media that Shohei Ohtani will get the start. He, of course, just pitched a few days ago. He would be going on only 3 days rest, which is very unusual for a starting pitcher. So the Los Angeles is in a position where it seems like they're just going to have to mix and match and throw various bodies out there and hope that they can pull it off. It's a very difficult situation to put Ohtani in. But I think they realize that they have to use him because they just don't have too many other good options. So it's a fascinating matchup. You get a guy like Scherzer who's been there for a long time and has such a great resume, and then potentially a guy like Ohtani who's simply the best player and the most unique player on the planet.
Oh yeah, that'll be quite the show for us watching at home. Now, I know a lot happened last night. We had costumes in the crowd. We had that ball hit by Addison Barger lodging itself in the outfield wall. We even had a pitch invasion. Do you have a standout moment or player in mind from last night?
Yeah, the guy who's going to be forgotten in all this that deserves some mention is Kevin Gausman, who was the Jays starter. He did give up 3 runs, as I mentioned. The Dodgers had that one inning where they bunched some hits together to score 3 runs off him. But he was otherwise outstanding. He had 8 strikeouts in 6 innings. And other than that one inning, they basically did nothing off him. So he was out there just, doing his best and keeping his team in the game. And there were moments, especially after they scored those runs, where you thought, the Dodgers might be able to blow this thing open, but he just kept doing his stuff, kept throwing good pitches, kept keeping them off balance. And he really gave his offense and the rest of the team every opportunity to come back and either tie it or win it. So you can't ask for anything more from that guy. He's really pitched very well all off season, and he's been a real hard luck case in that he just happens to be going against really good pitchers every time he pitches. So he hasn't had the wins. He hasn't been able to kind of walk off and get the huge rounds of applause that you like to get as you're a starting pitcher, but they could really have asked nothing more from him over the course of this whole playoff. So I tip my hat to that guy.
All right, wonderful. I do agree. All right, Scott, we leave it there for now, but thanks for teeing up tonight's high stakes Game 7 for us.
My pleasure. Anytime.